I'm 30. I finally admit why my Amish wife wanted divorce. I was 30 years old when my wife finally said the word out loud. Divorce. She didn't raise her voice when she said it. She didn't cry. She stood in our kitchen, the morning light coming through the small window above the sink, her hands folded the way women in our district were taught to fold them when they were finished asking. I remember the smell of boiled coffee grounds and the sound of the clock ticking behind her. I remember nodding, even though my chest felt hollow. What I didn't say then, what I couldn't say, was that I already knew why she wanted it. I just wasn't ready to admit how much of it was my fault. In our community, a marriage didn't usually end unless something loud had happened. A scandal, a sin made public, a confession before the church. But nothing loud had happened between Rebecca and me. That was the problem. Everything that broke us happened quietly, through agreements I made with other people, while telling myself I was protecting her. When I married Rebecca, I believed I was a careful man. I followed rules. I listened to elders. I believed that if you did what was expected, things would hold together. Rebecca was 21 when we married, gentle in a way that looked like obedience but was really patience. She trusted easily, especially me. The first person she trusted was me. The second was my mother, and the third, whether she knew it or not, was our bishop. At the start, there was nothing to betray. We were married in the fall, after harvest. The air smelled like apples and damp soil. Rebecca moved into my family's old farmhouse, and we began the quiet work of building a life that looked correct from the outside. She cooked. I worked the shop. Evenings were predictable. Supper, scripture, silence. It wasn't unhappy. It just wasn't examined. The first fracture came from something small. Money. In our district, husbands managed finances. That wasn't unusual. Rebecca never questioned it at first. She trusted me to handle the ledgers, the savings, the small cash we kept hidden in a tin behind the flour bin. What she didn't know was that I wasn't fully managing our money. I was following instructions. My father had left behind debt when he died. Quiet debt, tied to land repairs and old agreements. When I married, my mother sat me down and told me that some of what Rebecca brought into the marriage, her dowry, her savings, would need to help settle what was left. She said it calmly, like it was already decided. It's family, she told me, and you're the husband now. I didn't tell Rebecca. I told myself I would explain later, when it was finished. I told myself it wasn't really hers once we were married. I told myself I was sparing her worry. That was the first time I chose someone else's comfort over her right to know. The second fracture came from my mother herself. Rebecca tried to please her. She rose early, worked hard, asked questions. But my mother had opinions about everything Rebecca did, from how she kneaded bread to how she folded laundry. When Rebecca came to me, quietly, asking if she was doing something wrong, I told her she just needed time, that my mother was set in her ways, that it wasn't personal. What I didn't tell Rebecca was that my mother often spoke to me alone, after supper, after Rebecca had gone upstairs. She worried aloud about Rebecca's influence, her softness, her questions. She reminded me that marriages survived when wives didn't expect too much partnership. She needs guidance, my mother said once, not explanations. I didn't argue. I nodded. I thought staying neutral made me fair. The third fracture came from the bishop. Our bishop was a respected man, calm voice, careful words. When he asked to see me alone one evening, I went willingly. He asked about our marriage, about Rebecca, about whether there was peace in my home. I told him yes, mostly. He nodded, then asked if Rebecca ever questioned authority, if she ever asked about money, about decisions, about things already settled by scripture or tradition. I hesitated. That hesitation was my answer. He told me that sometimes a wife's restlessness needed boundaries, not discussion, that too much explanation could confuse a woman who had been raised simply. He said it wasn't cruel to protect her from knowledge she didn't need. I didn't realize then how much power I handed him by listening. Rebecca noticed changes before I did, not because they were dramatic, but because they were consistent. She stopped seeing the ledger. She stopped being included in decisions about repairs or purchases. When she asked about money, I answered vaguely. When she asked about plans, I told her not to worry. She grew quieter. The trust ladder shifted without me naming it. Rebecca trusted me. but I was already trusting my mother and the bishop more. They told me I was doing the right thing. Rebecca only asked questions. The first time she didn't speak to me all evening, I felt irritated instead of concerned. I told myself she was being emotional, that it would pass. Then came the request that broke something important. Rebecca wanted to take a short course in midwifery, not outside the community, within acceptable bounds. She had always been gentle with children, careful, attentive. She wanted knowledge that could help other women. I told her I would think about it. Before I answered her, I spoke to my mother. She disapproved, said education changed women, made them dissatisfied. I spoke to the bishop. He warned that it could pull Rebecca's focus away from her duties at home. When I finally answered Rebecca, I told her no. I didn't explain who I had spoken to. I said it wasn't the right time. She nodded. But something in her eyes closed that night. After that, she stopped bringing ideas to me. That felt like peace at first. I didn't realize it was resignation. The midpoint came the day Rebecca found the tin. I had been careless, left it out after checking figures. She opened it, saw papers that didn't make sense to her, old debts. Her name listed next to amounts she didn't recognize. When she asked me about it, her voice wasn't angry. It was confused, hurt. I told her the truth, but only part of it. I said the money had been needed, that it was temporary, that my mother had advised me. She asked why I hadn't told her. I didn't have a good answer. That night, she slept facing the wall. I lay awake, realizing that trust didn't break all at once. It thinned. The next shift came from someone I thought was helping. Rebecca confided in my sister, Anna. Anna listened kindly. She nodded. She told Rebecca she understood. Then she told my mother everything. My mother told the bishop, and the bishop called me in. He said Rebecca was struggling with submission, that it would be best if certain matters were kept firmly in male hands, that I should limit her exposure to decisions that caused her distress. He said it was for her spiritual health. I went home and told Rebecca we would be simplifying things, fewer questions, clear roles. She looked at me for a long time and asked, "Did you choose this, or did they?" I didn't answer directly. That was another betrayal. There was a brief season of false hope. Rebecca became compliant. She stopped asking. She did everything expected. The house was quiet. The church praised our orderliness. My mother was pleased. I told myself we had found balance. But Rebecca began to withdraw from other women. She stopped lingering after services. She stopped visiting neighbors. When I asked why, she said she was tired. The truth was simpler. She didn't trust anyone anymore. The deepest betrayal didn't come from a new action. It came from my silence. One evening, Rebecca told me she felt invisible, that she felt like a helper in her own life. She asked me if I saw her as a partner or a responsibility. I told her she was overthinking, that she should pray more. I could have chosen her then. I could have listened. Instead, I repeated the language I had been given. That night, she cried quietly, turning her face into the pillow so I wouldn't hear. The irreversible choice came months later. Rebecca told me she had spoken to a woman from another district, someone who had left a marriage and survived. She said she wasn't planning anything yet. She just needed to know what options existed. I panicked. I went to the bishop before she could. I framed it as concern, as protection. He moved quickly. Meetings were called. Warnings issued. Rebecca was counseled firmly. The message was clear: obedience or consequence. When Rebecca realized I had gone to him, her face changed in a way I had never seen. Not anger, clarity. That was when she stopped trusting me entirely. The title moment came quietly. "I want a divorce," she said months later, standing in the same kitchen where she had once asked permission for small things. She explained calmly. She said she no longer recognized herself, that she felt erased, that she didn't believe I would ever choose her over the structure that supported me. I didn't argue. I didn't deny it, because by then I understood. The consequences were immediate and long-term. The church treated the separation as a failure of leadership. Mine. My mother was angry, not at me, but at Rebecca. My sister avoided me. Rebecca moved away. Years passed before I understood the full weight of what I had done. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't violent. I wasn't loud. I was obedient to everyone except my wife. Now, at 30, I can finally admit why Rebecca wanted a divorce. It wasn't because she lacked faith. It wasn't because she wanted more than she was allowed. It was because I chose safety over honesty, authority over intimacy, approval over partnership. She didn't leave to rebel. She left to exist. Sometimes, when I balance my accounts at night, I still see her handwriting in the margins of old papers, notes she made when she still believed her voice mattered. That is what I lost.